Welcome you all. I'm sure we'll have some additional folks joining over the next few minutes, but thank you all for being here. Today, we're really excited today to be launching our program development learning network that is supported by our North Carolina GME-Technical Assistance Center. And so in this first learning network session today, we really want to talk about the foundations for why we are here, as well as the ways that we can support you as a technical assistance center. Oops. So we'll start out with introducing our core NCGME Technical Assistance Center team. And then we'll talk about some of the data that our larger group, our larger set of technical assistance centers has collected over the last 7 years that really show why we need why we need program development in North Carolina as well as elsewhere. We will share with you there's technical assistance resources that we have available to you for your development of your program in 6 different high need specialties, and then we'll finish up by talking about the multiple ways that you can reach out to us. So I want to introduce myself first, and then I want to ask everybody else to put your names, roles, and program and sponsoring institution affiliation in the chat, if you don't mind. And then I'll also have our other presenters introduce themselves while everybody is putting that information in the chat. So I'm Mary Alice Scott, and I'm the Deputy Director of the North Carolina GME Technical Assistance Center. I started this position in November, so I'm still fairly new in the role, but I am coming back home to North Carolina after 15 years working in New Mexico, many of those years doing similar work to develop rural programs in the state of New Mexico. So I'm very excited to be back home in North Carolina and be able to work with programs in North Carolina on program development in our state. So I want to pass it to Emily Hawes to quickly introduce herself.
Yeah, my name's Emily Hawes, practicing primary care-based pharmacist and director of the NCGME work, but really Mary Alice is leading our efforts, and you'll hear a little bit more about our national work in supporting rural residencies as well as teaching health centers develop. Lori?
Yes, Lori Rodefeld. I am one of the advisors for the NCGME Technical Assistance Center. I've been helping to support the national work, and since June have been an employee of the SHEP Center, but I've actually been working with the SHEP Center for almost, gosh, I think 4 years now. So a lot of wonderful time working to help support GME development in North Carolina and beyond.
Thank you. And one other person that I want to introduce who is not able to be on the call with us today, but who is really integral to our core leadership team is Shelby Rimler-Cohen, who is the Associate Director and really provides really essential support for our operations of NCGME as well as our other technical assistance centers. So you will, if you don't know Shelby, you will hopefully have a chance to meet her in future learning network sessions. So thank you all for introducing yourselves in the chat. This is our lovely pictures of our leadership team that we just introduced. So this is really our core team that really focuses on ensuring that we are able to provide you all with the resources that you need to develop programs across the state of North Carolina. We also have other really central key staff that are really important to the work that we do. Mukesh Adhikari and Justin Byron are research investigators that support the research that feeds into the practices that we develop to help support you. And then Julie Chin and Steve Brendage provide a lot of technical assistance and support in developing our products, ensuring that they are that they are valuable educational materials for everyone. And then we have 4 core advisors and content experts that support us across all of the work that we do in North Carolina. Brian Hodge is our physician advisor. Alan Douglas and Chris Francasio are our financial consultants, and Deb Clements is our program development and vitality consultant. And so you will hopefully be able to connect with them as you are developing programs in the state as well. So I want to talk a little bit about why why we're here. Why did we develop this technical assistance center? Why do all of us do the work that we do in developing GME? And I think you all will probably connect with this and probably already be familiar with some of this data. So I want to start out just by saying that we know that that we need access to healthcare in order to have positive health outcomes for our communities. And so we know, for example, that when we have a higher number of primary care physicians in a community, we have increased life expectancy, lower rates of all-cause mortality, lower poor self-reported health, and lower infant mortality. So having those primary care physicians in our community is really important. And Emily will talk in a little while about how training supports that. And in addition to primary care, there are other specialties that we focus on in our work that are also really important for our rural and underserved communities. And so we know that lack of access to OBGYNs, psychiatrists, and general surgeons are associated with worse health outcomes. So when communities have limited access to general rural surgery, there are greater complication rates and increased mortality. When a rural hospital loses obstetric services, there's a higher risk of preterm birth in that community. When communities lack access to psychiatrists and broadband, you see higher rates of adult depression, frequent mental distress, drug overdose mortality, and completed suicide. So we really need these physicians in all 6 of these high need specialties in order to really take care of our communities. And I'm going to turn it over to Emily to talk a little bit more about the connection to training.
So one of the well-researched solutions to addressing this maldistribution of physicians is to train them in places and settings where you need them. Data from graduate medical education in rural and federally qualified health centers shows that those types of training programs are recruiting and retraining graduates in those settings. This is just a couple of data points, but there is a growing body of research around this. 1 in 4 teaching health center graduate medical education graduates, which are those that are mostly in those federally qualified health centers, are more likely to practice in health centers and also in primary care. Rural trained physicians are at least twice as likely to practice in rural areas. Now, most of the body of research has been in family medicine, but there was a recent study in surgery that showed programs with rural rotations, rural-based programs, as well as those with a rural mission were more likely to produce rural practicing physicians. So Lori, I also want to see if you could chime in about what you've seen in Wisconsin and the data of training, place-based training in Wisconsin.
Yes, so one thing that I didn't mention is that I do work with the state of Wisconsin, where we actually have 29 programs that are either, rural track programs, rurally located programs, as well as programs with significant rural rotations. And I think it's really exciting to see the impact of our state-based efforts. All of our programs have a minimum of 2 months of training time, but most are far exceeding that. For example, we have a rural surgery program that has 18 months of rural training, working with general surgeons. And again, the outcomes for that particular program are fantastic. With 18 months of training, they're seeing about 75% rural practice. I also have some wonderful family medicine programs that have a wonderful rural mission. They may be a little bit shorter in their rural training time, closer to that 30% mark. But again, they're seeing like anywhere from 2/3 to 70% rural training outcomes. So again, really neat to see the impact of state funding and what that can do. And sometimes you have those barriers with CMS funding. And we have programs in OB, psychiatry, surgery, internal medicine. We have a couple of fellowships, including a OB fellowship. We have 2 of them that are, just doing wonderful work, training wonderful, residents and fellows, and just excited to see this grow in the state of North Carolina.
Next slide. So not only are physicians being recruited and retained in these settings based on place-based education, but we also found in kind of our national work that rural GME is increasing access to care and fostering team-based models of care. So these new rural residencies that we've supported launching are expanding services and team-based care. They're resurrecting obstetric services, bringing behavioral health services and staff like social workers to rural communities. They're ensuring treatment for opioid use disorder, creating school-based services, launching mobile farm worker programs, and ensuring that marginalized populations like those that have been impacted by incarceration have access to care. And although most of the research on the right side is related to family medicine, what we see is that family med physicians that train in health centers are more likely to, after they graduate, prescribe treatment for opioid use disorder and offer behavioral health services compared to those physicians that didn't train in health centers. There is unpublished data that also shows that surgeons that have trained in a rural environment are also able to practice with more breadth of care, like performing cesareans and doing kind of surgeries that aren't necessarily routinely seen in more urban settings. Next slide. One of the things that we remind policymakers and C-suite members of rural health facilities and health centers very frequently is that residents are not students. Residents are physicians. They're seeing patients. So one data point just to give you is that in 1 year, a little over 900 teaching health center residents provided care to close to 800,000 patients in 1 year. One of the programs, the rural programs that we supported in Oklahoma, shared the quote on the right to me. Within 6 months of starting the residency, wait times for assignment to a primary care physician reduced from 9 months to 3 months. Unfortunately, though, there's not enough training in rural and health center based settings. This slide depicts a study that we partnered with ACGME, their accrediting body, as well as the American Osteopathic Association to really look at the change over time of rural and health center based training. And you can just see, looking at this map or at this figure, that there has been growth and progress. Green represents rural rotation sites, as well as those that have greater than 50% training in rural. Red represents those that are training in federally qualified health centers. Nationwide, there's over 400 rural rotations and 300 federally qualified health center rotations. So we've seen this growth, and a large part of this growth has been related to the federal programs that we support, the rural residency and health center based training funding programs. Next slide. So one of the things that I just want to make sure you know loud and clear is that rural health facilities and federally qualified health centers, as many of you know, because several of you have done this in your respective underserved settings, can start programs. They need funding and technical assistance. So the two programs that we run nationally are the HRSA Rural Residency Planning and Development, also known as RRPD program, that has supported the creation of 62 new accredited residencies since 2019. Since 2021, we've been engaged in the Teaching Health Center Planning and Development federal program that has supported the establishment of over 40 new accredited residencies. So collectively, these two federal programs are supporting close to 200 developing programs across 45 states, 10 specialties, 105 accredited programs, with many pursuing accreditation right now, representing over 1,300 approved resident positions at full complement. But I think the thing that I like to point out on this slide, because we really have a state North Carolina focus group today, is that unfortunately, there's not enough federal funding. So we just got our new cohort of RRPD graduates, and a lot of applicants did not get funding that applied for it. So there's really not enough federal dollars. So what we're excited about is really that braiding together of both state and federal efforts to bolster rural and health center-based training. Next slide. So when we drill this down to North Carolina, what you can see here, the top figure represents the growth of green, which is rural training, and blue, which is health center-based training. So we see, just looking at that map, you can see there's been growth. And I want to acknowledge the many people in the room who've done the hard work of causing that shift and that increase in rural and health center training. And then interestingly, like we've seen federally, you can see down in the second figure that Blue represents teaching health center dollars, federal dollars. Green represents RRPD federal dollars. And so as you see those dollars increase, you also see that that startup funding and sustainability investment have contributed to rural and health center based GME development in our state. So we're excited to continue to see this grow. Mary Alice?
Thanks. So I want to share some of the things that we've been working on as a technical assistance center, really focused on North Carolina, drawing on a lot of the work that that our team has done at a national level with the RRPD and the THC PD technical assistance centers. And so the first, I'm going to share a series of 6 maps that show the 6 high need specialties that we are focused on in our work. And so what you'll see on each map is that the pins are the training site locations for that particular specialty. And then what you see in the background on the map are the North Carolina counties. The darker the color of the county, the greater the number of physicians per 10,000 population. So in other words, the darker the color, the higher the rate of physicians per capita for that area. So I think when we look at family medicine, we do at least see a partial success story already. Because what you see, first of all, is that we have training sites that are distributed pretty widely across the state. And you can see that in most of the places where we have training sites, you do see the darker colors. So you have more family physicians practicing in those communities that are surrounding the places where we have training sites. So we still, like I said, partial success story, because we clearly still have need, as you can see on this map. So there's a continued need to develop family medicine programs. But I think this demonstrates that when we do place trainees in communities, we do see a greater number of graduates of those programs practicing in or near those same communities. So the next slide I want to show you is internal medicine. So you can see in internal medicine, we see more of a concentration of training in urban areas, which it is challenging to meet the requirements we know for internal medicine, largely training in rural areas. But we've also seen some successes in the national work in developing those rural and underserved internal medicine programs. So we'd love to see more growth of internal medicine as well in North Carolina. I will note that 14 counties in North Carolina have no internal medicine physician. So there is significant work that we still need to do in internal medicine. When we look at pediatrics, you can see we have far fewer training sites for pediatrics, and they're largely concentrated in the urban areas of our state. So the Triangle area, Greenville, and the Charlotte area here. 19 counties in North Carolina have no pediatrician. And so the work that we have to do in pediatrics is significant, as it is for the next specialties that I'm going to share with you quickly. When we look at OBGYN, we see a really similar pattern. And so what I want to point out here is that 27 counties in North Carolina have no OBGYN that have a practice site in that county. And when we look at psychiatry, we see an even more bleak picture. Unfortunately, 31 counties in North Carolina have no general psychiatrists that have a primary practice site within that county. We do know there is telepsychiatry happening, so it's not that people in these counties have no access to care, but they may not have access to in-person care, which sometimes is really important for the type of support that people need. And then finally, I just quickly will share that for general surgery, 25 counties in North Carolina have no general surgeon. And you're, again, just to reiterate, you see the same pattern, that in the places where we do have training, you tend to see a higher concentration of surgeons in those areas where there is more training. Oops, I did not mean to jump to that really quickly. So just to summarize, we will continue, we plan to continue to update these maps as we do our work and as we support you in program development. And so we are really excited to see that the work that we do together, really improving the distribution of training sites across more places in the state, and improving access to care through increasing the numbers of physicians in these 6 specialties who are practicing across the state. And so I want to shift now to the resources that we have available. I know that some of you were with us for an earlier meeting back in June. We have significantly added to our resources since then, which I'm really excited to be able to share the additional resources that we have available now for programs in development. So the first is that we do, in order to just stay up to date on what we are developing, the resources that we have available, we invite you to follow us on LinkedIn. So we're on LinkedIn, we're North Carolina GME. We will post regularly both about the successes of programs that we're working with, unique resources that we identify, best practices, new ideas, for how you may be able to support your own program, connections that you may want to make with other programs across the state as well as nationally. So please follow us there to stay up to date. We also have a website that I will talk about in a little bit more detail in just a couple of minutes. And so that website is listed on the screen. We are continuing to build out this website. And right now we have a list of all of the people on our team, residency programs in rural and underserved areas that currently are training residents, and then the partnerships with others that we're working with. And we plan to build this out to include resources, specific resources for programs in development that we'll talk about in just a little while. And you can also always email us at info@ncgme.org with any questions that you have or anything else that we can potentially help you with. So I'm going to turn it over to Lori to talk a little bit about the work that we are doing at the national level. And these are some of the things that we are going to be that we will also have available on our North Carolina GME site soon. So thanks, Lori.
Great, thanks, Mary Alice. Yeah, we have just a wonderful kind of repository of different resources and information that if you are interested in rural GME development and any of the specialties we've mentioned, we already have a couple of wonderful portals that are available. There's Rural GME and THC GME. The information is similar, but it's definitely customized to the different audience. So the rural side is going to be focused more on, creating those rural residency programs. Some of my favorite tools are, we have a wonderful toolbox where you can search anything and everything. And these are even tools that are available to like existing programs. So if you're a program that was recently accredited and you have a continuing accreditation site visit, you can go into that toolbox. You can, kind of see webinars on how to prepare and how to, kind of get your faculty and your residents ready. And then we also have a wonderful hospital analyzer that I'll talk about in a little bit as well. But again, it's a really great starting point if you want to learn more about rural GME. And then on the teaching health center side, very complementary, but again, unique to the work of health centers, starting GME in health centers. We have THC GME. You can create an account in both of these portals and it's free. All you need is an email address and a password, and you can access all of the tools, all of the information. And I think just, kind of look and see like, on our training site map, you can see where other rural programs or health center programs are located. You can reach out to them. You can see all the wonderful programs that are in North Carolina, but then you can also look and see, maybe you're interested in something a little more unique, maybe, a rural surgery program, which we don't have one yet. So you could look at our website on rural GME and see the Marshall program, which is in Logan, West Virginia, and, learn a little bit more about their program, how the curriculum is structured, etc. So on the next slide, you will see that we have our training site map. So this is where you can really, dig in, learn about the different programs. And we know that in, rural programs and health center programs, each program is unique and set up and structured a little different. So recognizing that, we've created this training site map that not only includes, those that are over 50% rural training time, which is going to, make them more eligible for like a rural track program designation or funding. But then there's also many programs like the ones I mentioned in Wisconsin where maybe it's less than 50%, but they have a wonderful rural mission, rural rotations. You can kind of see both, but again, you can kind of filter by rural training time, and you can see it within North Carolina, but also across the country, where just different programs are emerging. And you can look at a number of different specialties, a number of different states, and just, kind of tap into a lot of the wonderful data that the team has. And then similarly on the health center side, there's a lot of different ways that you can do health center training. You can have a teaching health center program, and the health center is the sponsoring institution, or you could be partnered with the academic medical center that's working with the health center and providing some wonderful training time. So again, you're going to be able to kind of distill that by the percentage of training time, which is filterable. And you can also see what specialties are out there. For example, OB-GYN, there's like 3 OB-GYN programs, none in North Carolina. So again, that's an opportunity as we look at some of the data Mary Alice just shared. But you can see, where are those programs located? How are they structured? How are they training residents and kind of fulfilling that mission? So it's really a great tool. It's one of my favorite resources to go to. And again, I'm looking forward to seeing North Carolina have even more spots on the map. There's already a lot of spots on the maps for rural and for THC-GME. And then my favorite tool that I use all the time, I was just using it this morning, is our hospital analyzer tool. This is where you can look up every hospital across the US that filed a cost report in the past year. You can learn a little bit about the hospital and some of those key things you want to know about as it relates to GME. So we have a wonderful glossary that goes into more detail with some of these definitions and complexities. But what I think is really great is you can see, is this a GME naive hospital? Is this a hospital, that maybe is a rural referral center versus a sole community hospital? And there's funding implications associated with each of those. That's why we have that glossary. So you'll see that little click for more detail. You can get more detail, more information on each of those hospitals. But it's so great. It's a one-stop shop to kind of learn, is this hospital rural? If they are rural, are they CMS rural, which is going to open up funding opportunities? If they're Federal Office of Rural Health Policy rural, they're still rural, eligible for RRPD, eligible for state grants in North Carolina, but then the CMS funding is going to get a little more complicated. And again, this is a lot of information. And if you're not as comfortable with GME finance, you can go to our toolbox and learn more about GME finance, but you can also reach out to any of our team members. We're here to help, and here to help you navigate, answer your questions. And really, there's no such thing as not good question. We're always looking for ways to help, and we always learn from you when you ask those questions. So definitely reach out. We have a number of awesome resources in our toolbox that I just mentioned, and you can search by this wonderful typology that's linked to our roadmap for program development. And these are some of the key areas that every program will go through as they're developing or sustaining themselves. And you can, kind of search by different types, or what I like to do is I search all tools, and then what I'll do is I'll put in my search terms, and usually to start, I'll do simple, and then if I need to make it more complex, I can do that. But for the hospital analyzer, I'll just search analyzer. And then, if I'm looking up a GME finance webinar, I'll just type in finance, just something very simple, very basic to get started. And you can always make it more specific later if you get a lot of results. But if you need help navigating this toolbox, please let us know. We just really are excited that we can kind of connect you all with some of these wonderful tools and resources that the national efforts have helped us put together. And there's hundreds of resources. We encourage you to take a look. And then we also have a wonderful tool. If you search in the toolbox for prime rural hospitalist, you will find and I want to give the caveat that critical access hospitals were not included in this because they didn't file GME cost reports, or most of them don't file GME cost reports because they're claimed in a different way. But this is our hospitals that are GME naive and really prime for GME development. And you'll see there are many hospitals in North Carolina that are wonderful candidates for GME. You may see some of the hospitals that you work with on the list. Reach out to us. We would love to talk to you more if we haven't already. But again, this is just kind of based on our research, a lot of the research that Emily and the team did to really identify 141 hospitals across the US that were kind of crime for GME. And again, you'll see a large number of them are in North Carolina. That's why this work is so important to help those hospitals grow and really help get things moving so we can address workforce needs.
All right. So I want to share thank you, Lori, for all of those resources. We are working on bringing together the resources across all of our technical assistance centers. So soon you will be able to access a lot of those resources directly through the NCGME.org website. But as Lori said, you can set up an account now for free on either or both the ruralgme.org or thcgme.org to access those resources now directly from those websites. I also want to share some upcoming work that we have with the Learning Network specifically, so that you all have a sense of what we're going to be offering. This Learning Network will be scheduled once a month on the fourth Tuesdays from 1 to 2 Eastern time. I say that because I'm currently, at the moment, I'm in New Mexico. So I know all of you are probably on the East Coast. So this Learning Network will be happening once a month. We have them scheduled out right now through March. We're really focusing on what we have heard from people both within North Carolina and also nationally about what are the greatest needs or the greatest barriers for program development in each of the high need specialties that we're focusing on. And so we're trying to really prioritize those issues that come out as the largest barriers in the work that we do. So we know that faculty recruitment can be a challenge. So next month, Deb Clements will be presenting on best practices for rural faculty recruitment. In October, Lori will be presenting on developing rural rotations to engage community partners. And then in January, Evan Ashkin will do an introductory session on engaging community through carceral medicine rotations. He will also be, for those who are really interested in developing that further, he will be offering some additional sessions in addition to this one that will help you really get into the details of developing a curriculum around carceral medicine for those who may be interested in that. And then in February, we will have a presentation on developing rural OB tracks. And then in March, building relationships with tribal and VA partners to enhance rural training experiences. So that's what's upcoming over the next 6 months or so. We welcome any additional ideas that you have, other topics and areas that you would like for us to host. We have access to just a huge range of experts and people with many different types of experience in developing rural and health center training that we would love to draw on to be able to bring their expertise and their experience to you all in the work that you're doing. So please share with us any additional ideas that you have. And then we also have some very specific services for North Carolina program development that I wanted to share with you outside of just the webinars. We have, as I shared at the beginning, we have a group of advisors that has extensive experience planning programs in the 6 high need specialties that we're focusing on. We can support you through all of the stages of planning a new program. And I'm going to share with you some specific tools that we have available to help you do that. We also have our GME finance experts who can answer questions about GME funding, either one-off questions or working to develop financial models and plans for program sustainability as a more in-depth project. The toolbox that Lori referenced contains resources that you need to grow or sustain your programs. We will be adding resources that we develop within our North Carolina Technical Assistance Center as well to that toolbox, so you will have access to those there. We also can answer questions that anybody in the your GME office staff may have, and really hopefully direct you to appropriate advisors or recommend tools that we have in our toolbox to support any of your staff in your GME office. We're happy to come and do informational meetings with folks. Lori and I have just done a couple of GME 101 presentations to people in administration who needed some additional information regarding graduate medical education in order to consider what they might do in their own facility. So we can offer that. Administration and accreditation assistance if you're going through accreditation processes, so we can facilitate mock site visits, review your applications, answer questions that you may have. And then we do have nationally faculty development experts and faculty development resources that we would also love to share with everyone locally in North Carolina. And then finally, our advisors can provide advice on effective strategies for marketing your program and recruiting residents. So we hope that we're able to provide a suite of services that really covers all of the major areas that you might need in developing programs, and are happy to work with you and tailor things specifically to what you need. And as I mentioned, we have additional advisors in addition to our core team. I won't go through the whole list here, but this list grows daily. I think I made an edit to this PowerPoint about an hour ago. So this list continues to grow on a regular basis. We are so happy that we have so many people who are excited about supporting us in North Carolina in this program development work. So thank you to all of these advisors and content experts, and we're excited to start or continue working with you, utilizing the expertise of our advisors. I do want to turn it back to Lori now to talk more generally about the roadmap to GME development. And then I want to share a couple of very specific resources that we have that hopefully will help make this more concrete, because I know that presentation of that huge list can feel a little bit vague, but we do have very specific tools and resources to help you in each stage of development. So Lori, do you want to talk a little bit about the stages of development?
Yeah, no, and as we're building NCGME, we're really looking at creating kind of a comprehensive state strategy. The groundwork has been laid, for NCGME with all of the great work of, just all of these programs and all of these partners kind of coming together to grow a number of different specialties. But what we're really focused on is, kind of that exploration, and really helping you all with strategy development, with program design, offering technical assistance, and then helping optimize the overall work of GME in North Carolina. And it's really exciting. Our team at SHEPS has been talking with a number of different states about how we grow GME comprehensively as a state. And again, this is kind of, a piece that we're all working on to really help, just grow GME collectively throughout North Carolina. So again, we're, focusing on, stage 4, which is offering you all technical assistance and support. And I want to really just kind of emphasize, the importance of technical assistance. Our work in North Carolina is going to be absolutely critical, not only to the new programs that are developing, but also to programs that already are in existence. We need to make sure all of our programs are healthy and vibrant, and performing well, and meeting their mission and their objectives. So we're really here for all of you, whether you're looking at a new program or you have a program. We really want to help support. And if you are in kind of that development time frame, we do have a roadmap for that. And it, kind of goes through a similar kind of 5 stages. And then we also do have some really specific timelines for different programs, looking at, everything from, getting accredited to, kind of, recruiting faculty, to, recruiting that first class of residents. So again, we're really here to help you, here to support you every step of the way. We know that it is complex to run a program. We know that it's complex to really, sustain a program, and we want to help all of you with that.
Great. So I want to talk about, we have a specific methodology that we have developed based on our experience working nationally as well as with other states and in North Carolina, that I want to share briefly with you, just so that you have a sense of how we might work with you in developing your programs. And so our methodology starts with a readiness assessment that we do collaboratively with our individual partners, working one-on-one with those individual partners to just see where you are in the process. You may be very, very far along. You may be really at the very, very, very beginning stages, but that helps us understand what resources, which advisors we need to pair you with as you move forward in development. We also do feasibility assessments that include financial feasibility, looking at your facility's capacity for training, and really thinking about who else you might need to partner with in order to really develop a robust program. Again, you may be at a point where you've already done that work or you've done a lot of that work. And then we would move on to the next phase, which is really scenario planning and thinking through, okay, based on the resources that you have, based on the interest in training that you have, based on the champions that you have in your facility, based on the financial feasibility, what are some of the options potentially for the next steps in program development? And that is really individualized to each program that we work with. And then once you have decided which options you want to explore further, we can offer additional advising and resources to help you take the next step depending on the options that you choose. And so that's sort of a brief overview of the methodology that we use and are happy to partner with you at whatever stage you're in regarding development. And then Lori, do you want to talk about tracking progress?
Yeah, no, so as we work with programs, especially those new programs in development, we have some amazing tools and resources from our Technical Assistance Center. And this kind of relates to that roadmap. And we'll email that out to you because I think you'd all love to kind of, see that and take a look at it and, really kind of look at what it takes to launch a new GME program. And again, there's, 5 main stages, which include exploration, just, hey, like, can we start a program? What are the different models? What are the different options? Do we have the capacity to train residents? And what should things look like? Moving into program design, that's actually structuring the curriculum, really identifying which faculty do you have, which faculty do you need, how do you apply for accreditation? And then that moves into development, right? Where you submit that accreditation application, you get approval, you start recruiting residents. And then stage 4 is really kind of that startup where, the residents are starting in maybe a clinic or in your hospital, they're seeing patients. And again, you're developing those faculty, developing your staff, really trying to create that robust infrastructure. And then stage 5, we call maintenance, but I like to call it vitality. So we've actually created this wonderful vitality index. And the Vitality Index really kind of looks at the 8 key areas of a healthy, well-run program. And that's something that can be used with programs that have been accredited and maybe are an existing rural or health center program to help them identify maybe issues or concerns or challenges that they're facing, and how as a TA center we can help support you. So again, really, we've created this amazing framework that really, helps, kind of simplify that complex program development process, but then also help support those existing programs that are maybe in that stage 5 or they've received accreditation. We know that the hard work, it is getting accredited, it is figuring out the financing, but it's just as hard to start that program and and keep it healthy and strong. So again, we want to help programs kind of on both sides of the development journey and then the sustainability journey.
Okay. So that concludes the presentation part of this session. Please be in touch with us via email or visit our website if you have additional questions. But since we do have a few minutes, and so I'm happy to open it up if people have questions that they'd like to ask now. That would be great.
And I want to quickly comment while folks are thinking of questions is most of the research, the maps, our website are all based on kind of a agreement that we have with ACGME, but we know that there's limitations in the ACGME data. So if you have corrections, suggestions, ways that you want us to represent your program, we know that new programs are being developed. Like it feels like every other, like, not every other week, but like every month, it seems like there's new sites being developed. rotations being developed across our state. So please help us keep this information updated. And we're hoping that students use that want to train in North Carolina and want to be in rural and underserved and health center based settings. The other thing I want to share too is that the more I learn in GME, as you all may know as well, the more complexities there are with financing. And so the prime rural hospital list is just one tool, one analysis we did that showed, based on CMS financing and average daily census, that these hospitals seemed prime for kind of launching a program, but there's more that goes into play. And so I highly encourage you, and many of you have already, engaged with Mary Alice. We have amazing content experts and consultants to help you look at all the nuances. And so there's a lot of actual prime rural hospitals and rural health facilities throughout our state that are not on that list. So please know that we're here to support you and want to see our state have the most rural and underserved training across any other state.
Thank you, Emily. Does anyone have
Will you be sending these slides out to all participants today?
Emily, can we send slides out?
Yeah, we can. Not the maps, just because those are under review right now, but yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any questions or comments? Like, we also, I think the other kind of thing that we've learned, and many of you have seen this in the national work, is that we want this to be a community and you sharing with each other. So I'm looking at Joe right now, like he's developed rural and underserved programs, and we need to support each other, share best practices, share lessons learned. And so we want it to be not something that we're just coming with information. We want it to be a community of supporting each other. And one of the things that I like to say about Lori's work in Wisconsin is they had six rural programs back in the. Do you want to share this, Lori, and then share about the role of TA?
Yeah, so I'll give you kind of just a brief overview of Wisconsin. We actually had 6 rural training tracks in the late 1990s, early 2000s, and actually 5 of the 6 programs ended up closing. So that was very sad. We've had a longstanding large teaching hospital in the middle of the state that, they've always done well. They continue to grow. But, the rural family medicine programs really did struggle. And as we were kind of re-embarking into GME, we created a GME task force and really, brought people together, just like we're all together right now, and decided that, we needed to do technical assistance. You can't just launch programs and do startup without providing support. So in 2012, WCRGME was launched, and now we've added 29 programs. We have 10 more that are in development. And with the TA, we've been able to, continue to grow, continue to get more financial support from the legislature, and, really kind of create almost a movement, right? Where we're, creating this community where, and again, this is what I hope NCGME turns into, where, if we have, one residency program that is like, hey, we don't have room, but we have someone who wants to stay in state. Does anybody need a FMOB, wonderful doctor? And they kind of, pass it along to the rest of the group. We can work collectively to impact retention, impact physician workforce, and, really kind of create a successful movement that will, hopefully stand the test of time. Because again, you can fund startup, but if you fund startup, we've seen issues nationally, where, programs maybe aren't set up correctly. And if they would have had TA to, just have someone take a look at their financial plan or their curriculum model, things could have been maybe done a little differently. And there could have been a pretty significant, positive financial impact. And again, you don't want to ever base your curriculum decisions on finance, but you also can't ignore finance when you're, looking at how you set up and structure a program. So again, I think TA is really, so helpful, when you look at all the complexities, the accreditation, the different options for, planning and modeling things, but then also the finance. So yeah, it's been really neat to see things grow in our state.
Right. If no one has other questions, we can end a few minutes early, but I do just want to reiterate what Emily and Lori were both talking about, that in order for us to I'll reference back to those maps. In order for us to see the maps that we would like to see in our state, it does require all of us to work together as a community. And so this is not easy work that any of us are doing. And so the more that we can work together to improve, to increase training, to sustain the amazing training that already exists in our state in rural and underserved areas. We really want to bring together as many people as possible who have unique experiences, wonderful ideas about best practices, have had struggles that they've overcome, and to be able to bring those all to the table so that we can learn together from each other, as well as from the experts that we are really excited that we get to bring to the table as well, from the work that our team has done nationally. So thank you all so much for coming today. Again, please reach out if you have any questions or would like, if there are specific resources that you're looking for that you'd like to know if we have available. And we hope that we'll see you all next month. I'll be sending out some reminders to everyone about next month's session. And there is, in the last email that I sent, before I sent the calendar invite, there is a link to register for the September session if you'd like to go ahead and do that. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.